This is the houses of Achzib, part 2. Now let's go back to Abraham when he was known as Abram and when he was called out of Ur of the Chaldees. We read in Genesis 12, verse 1, Now the Lord had said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house unto a land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee, and in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. So Abram departed as the Lord had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. And Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran, and they went forth to go into the land of Canaan, and into the land of Canaan they came. And Abram passed through the land unto the place of Shechem, unto the plain of Moreh, and the Canaanite was then in the land. Note, Canaan land is unsurprisingly full of Canaanites. These are wicked people, and I'm going to talk more about that shortly. There was invariably going to be contact, interaction, and conflict between the Abrahamic family and the Canaanitish family or families. There would be interaction and conflict between God's covenant people and a people who were outside of that covenant and which were also given over to many depraved devices. We have just read of exceeding great and precious promises given unto Abram, and at the same time we have also read that the Canaanite was then in the land. Now I'm going to read about the Canaanites and their origin. We go back to Genesis 9, verse 22, and Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brethren without. Note, Ham is the father of Canaan, and Ham saw the nakedness of his father. In verse 23, and Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it upon both their shoulders and went backward and covered the nakedness of their father, and their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness. This is quite critical to what's going on. 3 times the nakedness of the father is mentioned. Verse 24, and Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done unto him. And note carefully, verse 25, and he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. Noah does not curse Ham, but curses his son. Why is this? What has gone on here? This is going to be a little bit graphic, and if there are young children listening, you may wish to check this out first without them being present so that you have the opportunity to vet this for them. The key to understanding these verses from Genesis 9 is to understand exactly what the nakedness of the father actually refers to. On the face of it, it appears as though this was some kind of homosexual activity, sodomy perhaps. But then why does Noah curse Canaan the son and not Ham his father? Quite obviously, no child can ever be conceived through homosexual activity. So what has Canaan got to do with his father's sexual perversions? There is obviously something more to it. Now we'll go to the law of the Lord in Leviticus 18, where this matter is explained and this term is defined. I'm not going to read all of Leviticus 18, but it deals extensively with uncovering nakedness. And I'm going to say up front that this is a very polite way of saying to have sex with. Okay? Leviticus 18, verse 1, And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, I am the Lord your God. After the doings of the land of Egypt, wherein ye dwelt, shall ye not do, and after the doings of the land of Canaan, whither I bring you, shall ye not do, neither shall ye walk there in their ordinances. You are not going to do after the doings of those in the land of Egypt, nor after the doings of the Canaanites. You will not walk in their ways. You will not do the things that they do. Verse 4, ye shall do my judgments and keep my ordinances to walk therein. I am the Lord your God. Ye shall therefore keep my statutes and my judgments, which if a man do, he shall live in them. I am the Lord. None of you shall approach to any that is near of kin to him to uncover their nakedness. I am the Lord. The nakedness of thy father or the nakedness of thy mother shalt thou not uncover. She is thy mother, thou shalt not uncover her nakedness. The law of God is very clear. Now in verse 8, the nakedness of thy father's wife shalt thou not uncover. It is thy father's nakedness. The nakedness of thy father's wife thou shalt not uncover. It is thy father's nakedness. The nakedness of the father is the nakedness of his wife, and that is referring to having sex with. Furthermore, we also read in Leviticus 20 verse 11, and the man that lieth with his father's wife hath uncovered his father's nakedness. Both of them shall surely be put to death. Their blood shall be upon them. To uncover the father's nakedness means to have sex with the father's wife. Accordingly, when we read in Genesis 9 that Ham saw the nakedness of his father, and that the son of Ham, Canaan, was cursed, we understand that Ham had sex with his mother, and this produced the son Canaan. Noah was drunk. Perhaps his mind was blurred at the time. It was all a bit hazy when he became sober. However, when the bump began to show on his wife, it became clear, if it wasn't already, it became clear concerning the dreadful thing that had occurred, and thus he cursed the child that was born from this revolting act. Now the descendants of Canaan were many. Genesis 10 verse 15, and Canaan begat Sidon his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusite, and the Amorite, not to be confused with the Ammonites from Lot, and the Girgasite, and the Hivite, and the Archite, and the Sinite, and the Arvadite, and the Zemarite, and the Hamathite, and afterward were the families of the Canaanites spread abroad. And the border of the Canaanites was from Sidon, as thou comest to Gerar, unto Gaza, as thou goest unto Sodom and Gomorrah, and Admah and Zeboam, even unto Lasha. Note that Sodom and Gomorrah were Canaanite cities, and as everyone knows, they were centers of unrestrained homosexual activity. So, from what we have just read from Genesis 10, we can see why it is that the Promised Land was called Canaan land. The land was largely comprised of Canaanites under different family names, and this is noted in several other places in the Bible. In Exodus 3 verse 8 concerning Israel's deliverance from the Egyptians, the promise that was that the Lord would bring them unto a good land and large, unto a land flowing with milk and honey, unto the place of the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Amorites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites. These were all Canaanitish families. This is also referred to in Exodus 13 verse 5, but the Perizzites are omitted there. However, over in Deuteronomy 7 verse 1 and also Joshua 3 verse 10, a complete list of 7 occupying Canaanite families is given, and these are the Hittites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, not to be confused with the Ammonites, and the Canaanites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and and the Jebusites. I'm going to insert a caveat to this list of Canaanite nations, and that is that I have not fully explored all the ins and outs of these nations. While I understand them to be all related back to Canaan by virtue of the record of Canaan's descendants given in Genesis 10, which we looked at, not every Bible commentary is clear on this, and this has made me think that it's possible that not all of these nations subsequently listed in Exodus, Deuteronomy, and Joshua are necessarily Canaanites by lineal descent, so please bear that in mind. That being said, the entry under the heading of Canaanites in Easton's Bible Dictionary is quite clear and refers to many of the verses previously shown, and says, concerning the Canaanites, this group was very numerous and broken up into a great many peoples, as we can judge from the list of nations. Genesis 10, the sons of Canaan. 6 different tribes are mentioned in Exodus 3 verse 8, Exodus 3 verse 17, chapter 23 verse 23, chapter 33 verse 2, chapter 34 verse 11. In Exodus 13 verse 5, the Perizzites are omitted. The Girgashites are mentioned in addition to the foregoing in Deuteronomy 7 verse 1 and Joshua 3 verse 10. Accordingly, for the purpose of this particular part of this presentation, that's where I'm going to leave it. These nations all had their origins with the Canaanites. The Canaanites and their related family lines were the dominant people of Canaan land. However, there were others marked out, most notably the Amalekites. Numbers 13 verse 29, the Amalekites dwell in the land of the south. And then it goes on, and the Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites dwell in the mountains, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea and by the coast of Jordan. While it's quite clear that Esau did intermarry with the Canaanites, I'm not clear on this in relation to the Amalekites specifically. The Amalekites were descendants of Esau's grandson Amalek, and Amalek was born of the woman Timnah, as recorded in Genesis 36 verse 12, and Timnah was not there noted as being a Canaanite. Timnah seems, according to what I have read, to have come from the region of Seir, which subsequently was Mount Seir was to become the Edomites' headquarters, but once again, I haven't fully explored this particular point, so please bear that in mind. It's a moot point in reality. It doesn't change anything in terms of this particular presentation, because one way or the other, there was an effusion of the Canaanites into the Edomites by virtue of Esau deliberately marrying these people. This Bible map shows the region where the Edomites lived, and that was in the land of Idumea, some say Idumea. This land is south of Judah. Like Achzib, which corresponds to Chezib, Idumea was proximate to Judah, even though the Edomites were absolute enemies of the children of Israel. Whether or not we see this in relation to the Judah nation only or the whole body of Israel. Much later in Jewish history, near to the close of the 2nd century BC, the Edomites were actually assimilated into the Jewish nation, and this further complicates the narration of the Jewish people, and I'm going to be talking more about that later. It's amazing that so many Christian folk are totally fixated with the Jews, yet they have never done any basic homework and simply don't understand the complexities involved. And I'm going to add that these complexities are not incidental issues but fundamental. But for now, we are going to continue looking at the Canaanites. Concerning the religion of the Canaanites, we read from the very popular, or once very popular, Halley's Bible Handbook the following. Baal was their principal god, Ashtoreth, Baal's wife, their principal goddess. She was the personification of the reproductive principle in nature. Ishtar was her Babylonian name, Astarte her Greek and Roman name. Balaam, the plural of Baal, were images of Baal. Ashtaroth, the plural of Ashtoreth. Asherah was a sacred pole, cone of stone, or a tree trunk representing the goddess. Temples of Baal and Ashtoreth were usually together. Priestesses were temple prostitutes. Sodomites were male temple prostitutes. The worship of Baal, Ashtoreth, and other Canaanite gods consisted in the most extravagant orgies. Their temples were centers of vice. Another horrible practice was what they called foundation sacrifices. When a house was to be built, a child would be sacrificed and its body built into the wall to bring good luck to the rest of the family. Many of these were found in Gezer. They have been found also at Megiddo, Jericho, and other places. They sacrificed their children to bring good luck, to have a better harvest, a hoped for better harvest. The religion of the Canaanites is actually still practiced today, and it's under the name of abortion. The child is murdered in order that the mother, or perhaps the mother and the father, can have a career without interruption, that they can prosper, no financial baggage, live as they want, but at its core, it is the same thing that was practiced by the Canaanites. Terrible. Also, in this high place, under the rubbish, McAllister found enormous quantities of images and plaques of Ashtoreth with rudely exaggerated sex organs designed to foster sensual feelings. So Canaanites worshipped by immoral indulgence as a religious rite in the presence of their gods, and then by murdering their firstborn children as a sacrifice to these same gods. It seems that, in large measure, the land of Canaan had become a sort of Sodom and Gomorrah on a national scale. Do we wonder any longer why God commanded Israel to exterminate the Canaanites? Did a civilization of such abominable filth and brutality have any right longer to exist? Can you imagine anyone writing a book like this today? However, he's only dealing with the facts. It is one of history's examples of the wrath of God against the wickedness of nations. And to be sure, the wrath of God is still going to be poured out against the wickedness of nations. Unfortunately, the wickedness that is practiced in our Western nations, that will be judged, and those that perpetrate these things. Lastly, we read, archaeologists who dig in the ruins of Canaanite cities wonder that God did not destroy them sooner than he did. Now that's all that I'm going to read concerning the Canaanites, their religion and culture. It's not very profitable. It's quite disgusting to read these things, but we get a taste for what these Canaanites were like. So to recap, Ham was intimate with his mother. The Bible uses the euphemism that he uncovered the nakedness of his father. One thing that we may appreciate about the KJV Bible is that children can safely read it without it giving rise to difficult questions when they are very young. Now, when it became known to Noah what Ham had done, Noah pronounced a curse on Canaan, who was the progeny of this disgusting union. And it was said by Noah, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren." And he said, "Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant." Twice Canaan is declared to be the servant of his brethren. We need to understand that when Noah spoke these words, it was not just the words of an angry man, and if that was the case, the words would carry no force and effect other than Dad was always angry. Now, it's my understanding, and I believe it to be true, Noah was in the office of the Melchizedek priesthood, and what he pronounced was by the Holy Spirit and was prophetic. The history of the matter shows that the descendants of Canaan were a very depraved people and had many abominable practices as part of their everyday life. It was God's intention that the family of Abraham, through the promised son Isaac, would marry among their kindred people, and as far as the Canaanites were concerned, they rate a special mention as being off limits. We read in Genesis 24 verse 2, "And Abraham said unto his eldest servant of his house that ruled over all that he had," that was Eliezer, "Put, I pray thee, thy hand under my thigh, and I will make thee swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of the earth, that thou shalt not take a wife unto my son of the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I dwell, but thou shalt go unto my country and to my kindred, and take a wife unto my son Isaac." Abraham was very clear as to what people Isaac should marry into, and in turn so was Isaac. We read in Genesis 28 verse 1, "And Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and charged him and said unto him, Thou shalt not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan. Arise, go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel thy mother's father, and take thee a wife from thence of the daughters of Laban thy mother's brother." In other words, you will marry within your kindred people. You will most certainly not take one of the daughters of the Canaanites. And in verse 7 we read, "Jacob obeyed his father and his mother." Isaac obeyed his parents. Jacob obeyed his parents. Esau simply didn't. And contrary to the command of his father, mother, and grandfather, he married Canaanites. And so we read in Genesis 26 verse 34, "And Esau was 40 years old when he took to wife Judith the daughter of Beeri the Hittite, and Bashemath the daughter of Elon the Hittite." These were Canaanites, which were a grief of mind unto Isaac and to Rebekah. They were both angry and upset with what Esau had done. Also in Genesis 36 verse 2 we read, "Esau took his wives of the daughters of Canaan, Adah the daughter of Elon the Hittite, and Aholibamah the daughter of Anna the daughter of Zibeon the Hivite." Clearly, Israel was to have nothing to do with the Canaanites, and by the time they were ready to possess Canaan land, they were commanded to utterly destroy them. Deuteronomy 20 verse 16, "But of the cities of these people, which the Lord thy God doth give thee for an inheritance, thou shalt save alive nothing that breatheth, but thou shalt utterly destroy them, namely the Hittites, and the Amorites, the Canaanites, and the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, as the Lord thy God hath commanded thee, that they teach you not to do after all their abominations which they have done unto their gods, so should ye sin against the Lord your God." Such were the commandments of God. Unfortunately, however, God's commandments are often ignored, and often deliberately so. The Bible is warts and all. It tells the truth, no matter who that affects, whether it be those that we would hope are good and godly, or those that are enemies. We get the truth, even the uncomfortable details. This is one aspect that proves the authenticity of the Bible as the Word of God. Human writings invariably extol and exaggerate the virtue of their leaders, their heroes. Not so in the Bible. In the Bible, if a person is described in favourable terms, it is only because it is true. If that person has terrible failures, we get that information as well. Now we're going to go to Genesis 38 and read about Judah. And here we learn of an unfortunate union between Judah, one of the 12 sons of Jacob, and a Canaanite woman. We pick it up in verse 1. "And it came to pass at that time that Judah went down from his brethren and turned into a certain Adullamite whose name was Hira. And Judah saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua, and he took her and went in unto her, and she conceived and bare a son, and he called his name And she conceived again and bare a son, and she called his name Onan. And she yet again conceived and bare a son, and called his name Shelah, and he was at Achzib when she bare him." Now take a mental note of this, the name of this son Shelah, and the place where he was born called Achzib. as these things are relevant to the matter at hand. Verse 6, and Judah took a wife for his firstborn, whose name was Tamar. And Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord slew him. And Judah said unto Onan, go in unto thy brother's wife, and marry her, and raise up seed to thy brother. And Onan knew that the seed should not be his, and it came to pass that when he went in unto his brother's wife, that he spilled it on the ground, lest that he should give seed to his brother. And in verse 10, and the thing which he did displeased the Lord, wherefore he slew him also. These half-caste sons, being part Canaanite, clearly had inherited something from their forefather, Canaan. Perhaps we may think it's just one of those things that they may have picked up from their Canaanite mother's behaviour, observing her behaviour or something like this. In light of the prophetic pronunciation that Noah made in Genesis 9 in cursing Canaan, it's my view that we have to understand that it goes deeper than this. I'm not going to go on and read the rest of the story at this point, as it deals with Judah reneging on a promise to give Shelah unto Tamar, and the story that follows essentially revolves around Tamar, who was then intimate with Judah after Judah's Canaanite wife died. Some people assume that Tamar was also a Canaanite simply because she was there, but this is not correct. The fact that Judah said that Tamar should be burned with fire, as recorded in Genesis 38 verse 24, is an indication that she was from a priestly family, because being burned to death for whoredom was the punishment reserved for the daughter of a priest who was guilty of this sin, and that's recorded in Leviticus 21 verse 9. As well, the extra biblical writings of the book of Jasher clearly state Tamar's ancestry from Arphaxad, which is within the family of Shem. These things are all very interesting, but they're going to take us in another direction. For the sake of completeness, I will add in the quote concerning Tamar from Jasher chapter 45 verse 23 there, which says, and in those days Judah went to the house of Shem and took Tamar the daughter of Elam the son of Shem for a wife for his firstborn Let's summarize the matter currently in focus. Judah went in unto a Canaanite woman, the daughter of Shua. The name of that woman is not given in the scriptures. However, in the Septuagint translation of the Old Testament, a name is provided, and that name is Sava, S-A-V-A. Sava conceived by Judah and had 3 sons. The first son was called and Judah gave him Tamar to marry. The Lord slew for an unspecified wickedness. It seems pointless dwelling upon what this may have been, but the Canaanites were a wicked race of people, as we have previously noted. The second son was called Onan, and he was required by his father to marry the widow Tamar. Onan went in unto Tamar, but spilled it on the ground, and the Lord slew him also. The third son was called Shelah. He was the youngest, and Judah promised him to Tamar when he was of age. But if we were to read the rest of Genesis 38, we would find that Judah reneged on that promise, and Tamar remained a widow. This brings me to the fourth and what I believe is the most important point, and that is that Shelah remained alive and was within the family of Israel, specifically in the tribe of Judah. Within Judah, a generation of half Canaanites grew up and continued with God's people. That's not good, but the Bible's warts and all, and there it is. And this does explain a few things which we are going to get to. And one final point of significance is that Shelah was born at Achzib. That's not actually how you're meant to pronounce it, but I'm going to keep this simple. Shelah was born at Achzib, as recorded in Genesis 38 verse 5, and I am going to comment further on this point shortly. For the sake of completeness, the Shelah born to Judah should not be confused with the Shelah born to Arphaxad referred to in 1 Chronicles 1 verse 18, which is a slightly different name in the Hebrew language, and who lived and died long before Judah's son came along. In the Chronicles of Israel, we get a very brief recap on what we have just read. We read in 1 Chronicles 2 verse 1, "These are the sons of Israel, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun, Dan, Joseph, and Benjamin, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher." Verse 3, "The sons of Judah, and Onan, and Shelah, which three were born unto him of the daughter of Shua the Canaanitess. And the firstborn of Judah, was evil in the sight of the Lord, and he slew him." It doesn't mention Onan, but goes to verse 4, "And Tamar his daughter-in-law bare him." I'll read that again. "And Tamar his daughter-in-law bore him Pharez and Zerah. All the sons of Judah were 5. 1 Chronicles 2 verse 4 notes that there were 5 sons in total born to Judah. And if you are interested, there is a related but different topic on my YouTube channel, dealing with Lazarus and the rich man, the parable found in Luke chapter 16, and if you wish to avail yourself of that, that is available. Genesis 46 contains the genealogy of those of Jacob Israel who went down into Egypt. Verse 12 of this chapter records, "And the sons of Judah, and Onan, and Shelah, and Pharez and Zerah, but and Onan died in the land of Canaan, and the sons of Pharez were Hezron and Hamul." It's clear that Shelah went down with Israel into Egypt. Hundreds of years later, in the book of Numbers, we will read that the descendants of Shelah had grown up into the family line of the Shelanites, which emerged from Egypt with Israel during the Exodus and continued on with Israel. Over in Numbers 26 verse 19, we read, "The sons of Judah were and Onan, and and Onan died in the land of Canaan. And the sons of Judah after their families were of Shelah, the family of the Shelanites." And then it goes on, "Of Pharez, the family of the Pharezites, and Zerah, the family of the Zerahites." The fact is that the scriptural record is demonstrating that this family of half Judah, half Canaanite people were growing up within the congregation of Israel and also keeping their own distinct family line. The Shelanites were growing into a house within Israel, and this is connected to the houses of Achzib, as we're going to go on and see. This is the end of part 2.